Attention, all you fishes in the sea. Welcome to the Fisch Bowl with Sam Fisher.
Craig Anderson and Robin Wilson of the Yets on the Fisch Bowl. Welcome.
Thank you.
Sam.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time to swim in the bowl with me. I hope the temperature was just right.
It is like a bathtub.
Right. All right. I got my snorkel on, so I'm ready to swim around and dive into the Yets.
Great.
Awesome. I have been listening to Pinup Girl since I got the little sneak peek courtesy of Shauna McLarnon, Shameless Promotion PR. I just connected with her towards the end of last year, and she is one of the best publicists and nicest people that I've had the chance to connect with, to connect me with awesome musicians like you guys. And I'm looking forward to when Shauna hears this, continuing to work with her to check out, get sneak peeks and listen to bands that I'm a huge fans of and bands that, I'm interested in checking out that I may not be aware of, but I'm a huge music lover. I consider myself a rocker, through and through is my favorite genre, and everything that kind of, goes, in between and all around and subgenres and all that. But I had a few questions before we dive into your new album, which my first question is for both of you, and that is, what got the two of you interested in music?
Oh my gosh, that's a long time ago. I was always into it. My dad always listened to music. He was into the big bands and, that era. And there was always music playing in the house. And, and then I started discovering music on my own. I was pretty much an only child. I had two sisters that were both out of the house when I was born, but just always loved music, always loved rock, and then in high school, just decided to put together a little rock band in high school, and it just went from there. I just love music, all different types.
Awesome. Craig?
Man, that's a horrible question. How long do you have? It's
Well, actually, it's how long do you have?
I'll give it the Reader's Digest version. So I was raised around music. I started playing when I was in the third grade. I started playing the trumpet. I moved from the trumpet to the drums to the guitar, and started my first band when I was in seventh grade, and didn't look back from there. And here we are today. I grew up overseas, and so I was exposed to music at a very different level in terms of rock music than most of the people my age, because I was right there where it was really all happening at the Who, the Stones, those, and so when I came back to America, my view on music was very different. A lot of people ask me, what made you want to play the guitar? Two guys, and then a third came later, but all from England, Jimmy Page and Keith Richards. So, and now, of course, the great David Gilmour. But so I've loved music forever. And when it was only natural for me to want to perform it, because I was much like her. She saw it. She said, I want to do that, and that's what got us both into it. We said, I want to be that. And we were much different than, a lot of people want to be that, but they never become that because they just don't do that. And we did that. What got us here.
Awesome. My dad is probably the sole parent responsible for getting me into music and movies and radio by letting me listen to Howard Stern when I was way too young, which probably influenced the podcast and doing that. But I mean, I a lot of, when I was I can remember back to first and second grade, and my dad would, pick me up. He was like the stay-at-home dad, and worked the night shift and doing nursing and stuff. And he would pick me up, after school. And I remember driving home in our minivan and listening to Tommy and Who's Next, and you know, Stones, Zeppelin. I mean, he actually has this famous story, and I'll tell it because I just celebrated my 37th birthday on the 18th of April, and every birthday he like recites this story to me. And I was born in Silver Spring, Maryland, and he said tells his story about how like I was born on a Monday morning. I was like overdue like 2 weeks or something, maybe a little longer. And you finally were born, and I was like, holy shit, I have a son, and he, make sure my mom's okay, gets in the car to go home to, take care of the dog I grew up with. And, the whole ride home, he's like talking about how whatever radio station was around then played like an hour commercial free block of Zeppelin. And he drove the whole way home, from the hospital back to whatever townhouse, whatever they were living in at the time, just jamming out to like Kashmir and, different classic Zeppelin songs, and being like, holy shit, I have a son. So he always tells that story every birthday. And it's like, I can't believe you're 37 years old now. Like, Jesus, where'd the time go? And my music interests and knowledge has like only, advanced. Like, I like to think if the roles were reversed and I was the dad and he was me, growing up in the age of like, everything with like the internet and Spotify, and just like more access to music, and also how to like research music, and dig for stuff and find related bands and all that stuff through different like music apps that are available now. But like I like to think that if the roles were reversed, he'd be just as like in tune, and if not more knowledgeable as I am. But I love listening to music. I love how music kind of and film kind of go side by side. And especially how you can like subject to Tarantino and Rodriguez, specifically how they incorporate music into their films, and how you can. I mean, Rodriguez has his own band that does all the music for his movies, and Tarantino just, I mean, from Pulp Fiction to Jackie Brown, to Reservoir Dogs, it's like there's certain songs he uses that you're like, anytime you hear that song, like after you see those movies moving forward, it's like instantly like stamped and ingrained like in your head that like, you know, that song is that scene in that movie, and before Tarantino, I have to use Scorsese, specifically using a lot of the Stones and Clapton, specifically again, iconic scene, Goodfellas, when Layla's playing, and or the piano solo of Layla, and you just sort of, the infamous scene where all the bodies are being, you know, uncovered after, the heist or whatever. But it's I think it's really interesting and impactful, the choices of music overlaying with film and everything, and how, it can not only help a person discover music and be like, who is that band, which has happened to me a lot. But that leads me to my next question, which is, who are some of your, I guess, musical influences? Because in Pinup Girl, I hear a lot of different blends of different bands, and it also has like a very kind of throwback like 90s but also like mixture of classic rock sounds as well.
Go ahead.
Me first.
I don't even I don't even know where to start. I mean, I should think about this. I mean, my musical taste it's always changing. Going back to our first release, there were a couple songs that were likened to the Cocteau Twins. I love her. I love them. That's one point. But then on the other point, I love singing hard rock.
Mhm.
Chris Cornell to me was
Definitely.
just freaking epic. So I do love all those 90s rock bands. I really wasn't exposed to a lot of different music when I was young. We had one radio station. Well, we had WBEU, which was I grew up in Beaufort, South Carolina, and they played top 40 and I don't even remember what else. And then if you went to the beach, you could get WAPE, which was the Big Eight from Jacksonville, Florida, and Wolfman Jack was the one of the DJs on there. Yeah, so it's like I just have so many different tastes. I can't really liken it back to anyone in particular. Well, when I first started singing, I would say Pat Benatar. She was like the first, that and Heart, women that rocked.
Right,
Um,
right.
yeah, so that was
Joni
like the
Bennett
beginning.
in ways, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, Steve Perry.
Steve Perry. Yeah, I loved that when I was young, showing my age. But yeah, I loved rock music. And when I grew up, I didn't really have a lot of friends that were girlfriends that were into it at all. So it's like I felt kind of like a freak, in my high school years. We weren't exposed to it unless you had an older brother or sister that listened to it. So I was pretty much an only child, so I just got what I could get, but always loved it.
Wow. So what are the influences on that? So I'm a metal guy. As odd as that may sound to listen to our music, I'm an absolute headbanger. And so, my influences musically, I'm like a musical chameleon, kind of sort of, because one side of me, the guitar player, goes in one direction, but me, the musician and the composer, goes in a different direction. I love alt rock music. I love 80s music and 90s alt music. I'm a metal guy, but the bands I've played in over my whole life, I've played, you name it, I played it. And so the influences are big, but I think if you were to drill down into one thing, and I mentioned him earlier, my all-time favorite guitarist is David Gilmour. And I think you can hear some Gilmour
Definitely, definitely.
or stuff, not to copy, but to almost pay homage. And it's
Yes, yes,
it's I embody all these in my style. I love Steve Vai. You see one of Steve's guitars hanging on my wall.
definitely.
John Petrucci down on the end. Mark Tremonti right behind my head. I mean, I'm a guitar, and she, she'll be the first one to tell you that's we. She indulges me in listening to a lot of music she probably wouldn't listen to otherwise. But another one, we both like a lot of the music that came out of the 80s and early 90s. And so there's a lot of that in there, but it goes all the way back. You can hear some 60s stuff and some 70s stuff.
Yes.
I mean, it's really hard. But what we do, because we have the luxury of doing it, is we write what we want to write. And for this record, we kicked up maybe like 4 songs. I mean, we've got tons of songs, and we get through them, and we had like maybe I guess 4 that were actually all the way done, and we kicked those in favor of doing some other stuff. So we're even changing our own mind as we go through, and we think that the album's done, and then all of a sudden the album's not done. So it's to ask a question like that's why I said hello to be God. It's just like,
And I mean, he'll write songs and I'll come in and listen to him and then he'll be like, this one's a rocker, you might not like it. It's just I do. It's just, and then we'll start working on music and it's not like we say, let's write this song that sounds like this. he'll just write stuff and it just evolves into whatever. We're not really going for a sound, so to speak, or an era. It just comes out how it comes out. And yeah, I mean, we listen to a lot of rock music, which I love. I mean, we're like, let's do the next CD or album. Let's make it like rock. And then I'm like, yeah, but then we start writing it. It just, the songs aren't really rock. But I don't know. It all evolves.
It's strange because literally in a 5-minute span, I'm saying, okay, this sounds kind of like Dream Theater. And then all of a sudden I said, nope, I'm going to do Duran Duran. And I'm off totally down a different path in my head. But the way that we generally work kind of shows the way that we put all this in is I'll compose something and then she picks what we want to do for the band. And then she takes it and she runs with it from there. And then once we've got that, and she's got the vocal lines, the melody lines, everything done, we'll come in and start working on the demos of that. We'll get a demo, and then what we do is that we compose the song the rest of the way out together. And we write everything, we perform everything, we record everything, we do everything except master it. And our buddy Jay Matheson at the Jam Room in Columbia does that for us. But you mentioned your love of music and film. She does all of our videos. She creates all of our videos. I don't know if you've seen any of our videos.
I have, yeah. I've like watched all the videos for the album that's available, and I love them. They match like the whole, I'm not sure if vibe is or the right word I want to use, but the essence of like each song, the video definitely matches like I guess the tone or like what people are I guess supposed to feel through music and then like vision, and encompassing the both. It matches like really well.
Thank you. It's so fun to do.
Well, she's an amazing, like I sometimes she's my Renaissance woman. She can do everything. She's an all around artist. I mean, she paints, she's a photographer, she's a videographer, she does all of our videos, she writes music, she's an amazing vocalist. So all these things she brings in, and it's this wonderful gift that God's given us that we can put this whole package together ourselves and really so what we deliver out there. All of our music has a message. All of our songs are about something or someone. And there's none of this stuff, oh, well, this song sounds good. Let's throw some lyrics in there just to get something out there and make it sound as catchy as we can. And we'll see if throw it at the wall and see if it sticks. We write what we want to write. And so all of her songs are about somebody. Like, can I tell about the Pinup Girl?
Mm-hmm.
Or you tell about the Pinup Girl?
Oh, Pinup Girl. Well, the picture on the pictures of my mother. My father took that photo back in the 40s, early 40s.
Wow.
And yeah, so it's about her. It's about her looking at it from her eyes viewpoint. And then my mother passed away from Alzheimer's several years ago. And it's just about, the loss of those memories. And so it's about her. Yeah. So I use that. We have that photo and I love it. And I wasn't so sure if I wanted to put that on the cover or use it, but Craig's like, let's use that. It's great. So that's how that whole thing came about. But, he'll write the music and then I'll take it and listen to it. And then lyrics will just come to me, a line or a, subject that I want to write on. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes I have to just let it sit and then it'll come to me. It usually comes to me like at night when I'm trying to fall asleep, which is not the ideal time. I'll start. I think it's because I'm in that space, the zone in between, waking and sleep, that zone where I'm just free. And ideas will start coming to me then. So I'll have to get up and go write it down, or I'll have a notepad next to the bed and I'll scribble in the dark, ideas. And it's some nights it's really hard because it just starts coming to me and it's hard to sleep. And I don't want to sleep because it's, that
Right.
channel is open where I'm that creative channel gets open and I just go. So.
Well, you know who else does that exact same thing? On the subject of horror and writing and movies and stuff, Stephen King. I actually this is how the story was told to me, but his book Christine,
Mhm.
and then of course the famous John Carpenter, movie version from the 80s. But the story goes, and even if you read the book, at the beginning of the book, there's a tribute to Ramiro and his wife at the time, whose name was Christine Ramiro. And the story goes, they had like, I think, just wrapped Creepshow 1, and they were all hanging out. I was told there were some drugs involved, and they were all having a good time. And Stephen King was at whatever house or whatever in Pittsburgh here, and he apparently just like something hit him, and he said, "I have to go." And they were like, "Why? Is it still going?" It's like, "I'm sorry, I have to go." And apparently, that idea was he was just hanging out and partying and having a good time with Ramiro and his first wife at the time, Christine. And it just hit him, and he left and started just typing away, and that turned into the book Christine, which is supposed to take place in Pittsburgh and essentially be like a tribute to, the lost steel factory and the time of like that era of like Detroit, making cars and steel being like the major industry that was thriving, and it's all gone now. But I also have heard that he literally will wake up in the middle of the night and with an idea, and just as soon as it hits him, he just starts typing away or writing stuff down, and which it's it shows signs of a really brilliant and creative mind. So I'm all for that. That happens to me sometimes. So, or I may dream it and then wake up and be like, I have to, write what I dreamt down, because I went to school for screenwriting. So it's like if I have an idea for a dream or something that's like, so real or something, it's like I have to just jot it down and while it's still like fresh in, my mind before like I lose, whatever. I think it's more of like a spirituality realm, that
Mhm.
It is.
takes you, yes, exactly. And it for whatever your craft is, whether you're a musician, a writer, a director, an actor, a comedian, and not even anything with the arts, whatever your niche is, I feel like, I definitely believe in spirituality and stuff like that. So I think that there's, a certain, like Robin said, a certain like that space where it's like you said, you're literally free, to like roam and essentially fly, going through whatever realm or dimension or alter ego or whatever that it's the subconscious, whatever that space is, in the mind or whatever. I definitely believe in that 100%.
It's and it stinks if I'm like, oh my gosh, it's such a great line for a song, and I'll repeat it, and I'll say, I'll remember it in the morning, and then you don't. I'm
Yeah,
like, oh, why didn't I write it down? Or I'll write stuff down, and I'll think it's just and then I'll read it the next day and be like, that's stupid. But that's just how, it's like, it's almost like it's brainstorming, you
right.
know, maybe almost subconscious level.
Right.
I mean, I'm conscious, but yeah, it's powerful. It's really powerful. And to me, some nights it's annoying because I'm like, I've got to go to work in the morning. I can't be up trying to figure this out. And it's hard to shut it down sometimes when it gets going. Craig gets up at like 4 in the morning and starts writing, and just he's got all these ideas, and I'll come in and he'll be like, let's look through what all these ideas I have of music. And I mean, he'll have like 50 songs on the computer, not from one sitting, but he's laughing, but we'll have to go through them all. And it's like, he says, I just have to get it out. I've got to get it down.
It has to. So years ago, before I started composing and recording, and even before I met Robin, this buddy of mine played the song for me by Keith Urban. And it's off one of his very first albums years ago. He hadn't even moved from Australia to the States yet when he recorded this. The song is called The Ghost in the Guitar. And it's almost like that. It's like, I'll put it, I've got more guitars than any one man should have, but one of them will say, it's me. And I'll get that one. And of course, she'll come in and it's a different one. It's just like, oh, it's Baskin Robbins flavor of the week. So, but it just comes. And then the beautiful thing is it comes through me, and then he gives it to her. And that's when it really shines, after she gets a hold of it. That's where the magic happens.
I can tell the whole album is just phenomenal.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I mean, I like, you may give me some criticism and some slack for what I'm about to say, especially pertaining to Zeppelin, but as much as I love Zeppelin, this is my take. Of course, it's not everyone's, but I can kind of hear, like, in a lot of their albums, some filler music. Like some of the songs are great and epic, and they are, and they always will be. But and it's not just Zeppelin. There's a lot of rock bands, especially from that era, that have really great music, and then there's in between tracks that are just eh. It kind of goes with the album, but it's not like it's no Cashmere, or it's it's not a no quarter. The Who kind of has some of the same stuff. The Stones definitely, and every single song on your album, I think, not only, flows together and sounds awesome, but it's like I can take away a different emotional response from each song, but also like really dig and kind of like, I don't know what's the word I'm trying to use, break down like each song, and the difference between, each song on the album and the sound, and what like I kind of get from, one song versus another, what it reminds me of, particularly since we're on the subject of like music and older stuff. I wrote down here because there was, what song is it? Hollow Oaks. That song specifically, and this is where my mom's side of the musical contribution to my spectrum of listening to stuff. The first time I heard it, the song that it because it triggered an emotional response, especially from my childhood, and the song that it reminded me of was "The Circle Game" by Joni Mitchell. And my mom used to, like, when I was a little kid, would sing that song to me to kind of like before bed, and to like get me to calm down. And I was a wild child, so anything she could do, or anything both my parents could do to like calm me down and get me ready for bed, was like, if it works, do it. And I remember, my mom singing that song to me as, a little fish. And, it triggered like, like a flashback to when I was young, in a potentially a better time, altogether. Because my parents are divorced now, and uh, I'll just say it's not the prettiest or nicest ending of a marriage altogether, but thus, the fact that, the song reminded me specifically of like that song, which then in turn triggered, an emotional, memorable response of like, this is like what my mom would sing to me when I was a kid. And I'm like, holy shit, it's like I can hear, you know, the essence of, Joni Mitchell, but like mixed with, other stuff and a different type of sound, but at the same time, like that's at least the major like musical influence that I heard specifically in that song that really had like I think the most impact on me throughout like the entire album just because like of the memory that it brought up. But Chemistry is another song that I really, really like off the album. And I have some other ones written down here. Broken Arrow, another great track. Black Sheep, Enemy, I know that's one you guys are promoting, and Broken Arrow too. But just the whole album is just like really, really phenomenal. You hear like I think a multitude of different bands throughout the decades in each track, and each track just kind of brings like a different element to the table while all kind of like coinciding together to make up the entire album.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
That's so nice to hear that about that song. I'm so glad. As a musician, you want it to touch people with what you're singing. Some of it, like Enemy, is hard.
Right, right.
But that song, Paul Oaks was kind of like we were saying, it's sort of like yacht rock sounding because it's just got that vibe to it. And we're back and forth about the next song to release. It was either going to be Black Sheep or Hollow Oaks. We might need to do Hollow Oaks now.
We were literally on the fence.
We have a video.
We have videos for all the songs, and we're in the process of releasing all those. And we were just debating that. So should it be Black Sheep or should it
I
be
think
Hollow
we'll
Oaks?
have to do Hollow Oaks
So
for
yeah,
you.
we'll
Thank you.
we'll shoot you an unlisted link to it on our YouTube channel, and that way
Okay.
you'll be able to see it.
Yeah. I wrote that
Awesome.
song. It's, about someone sticking with you through it all. Wind passes through, it's me and you're not alone. I think that's what I sing. It's been a while. But, and then I gave this song to my sister, my older sister, as a gift. And, so it's just, I'm curious to see what other people will think about it.
Yeah.
A lot
yeah.
of my fans from my previous bands like the heavy stuff because I sang, in a goth rock band early in the 80s, and then in the 90s I was in another group called Skirt, and it was female fronted band, except the drummer was a guy. And so that was also pretty heavy music. So, it's interesting to release stuff that isn't like hard rock and just see what, people think about it. And I love singing. And this has been different for me vocally because I was never used to using a softer voice singing. I was used to just like balls to the wall every song, like, like, la, So I've had to experiment with my voice, which has been, it's been hard. In the beginning, I would just be so frustrated with myself because it's hard to sing soft. It's easy for me to wail on a song. Easy. Singing soft is not easy. I think it's just a different way. Vocal control is totally different. But this album, I do it all, and it's helped me grow as a vocalist. And also with writing, lyrically, it's been, I was insecure about what I wrote about before in my other groups. It was more just kind of get something out and feeling judged by what I was saying. And it's when we first started this, we were together. We both were in bands before. We didn't know each other then, but when we first started writing, I was like, gosh, I hope he likes my lyrics. I hope he likes what I sing. And that fell away like pretty much instantly. And he's watched me grow and struggle with my vocals. I don't get it right the first time. I don't like how my voice sounds on certain takes. And he has been able to coax out of me what I didn't know I had. So it's helped me grow as a musician. It's awesome.
Yeah, that I have to agree. And anything that can help any type of artist or craftsman in any form, I mean, the thing they say about writers and in screenwriting and writing and stuff in general is it's not writing it, it's rewriting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's talk about rewriting things. It's because we start at the bedrock level and build it from there. And there are times when we will get all the way to the spire of the pinnacle, and we decide, yep, brick number one's got to go.
Yep.
And we're all the way back down in the basement, chiseling something out and working it back in. And that's the amazing thing of it. And plus, we perform everything. So it's like, and one of my buddies who's a great musician asked me, he said, "So at this point, what's your favorite instrument?" And I said, "My wife's voice."
Oh.
Because it's the most amazing thing ever. It's just like what she said, it can seem very one dimensional, two dimensional, three dimensional, but when you add her to the equation, it just blossoms. I mean, you could hear it all through her music. Her voice is what just takes it somewhere else. It's
Well,
amazing.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm thinking about, you liked Chemistry, that song, and it started out
It's
totally
It's
different.
totally different.
I mean, I
If
wish,
you heard the original demo,
you'd
you'd
be
be
like,
going, "What?"
yeah, it's funny how I'll think back on it, or I'll go through like I've got, a little tape recorder, I'll record, little song ideas like vocal lines or whatever, melodies, that's what I use it for. And I'll rewind it and I'll be like, oh my gosh, it's hilarious. What were we thinking? Thank God it changed, and we'll start, we'll have a whole thing going with a song and then we'll be like, wait a minute, this is like completely getting out of control. We'll have like horns going because, we play everything. Can you imagine? I mean, it just gets nuts and like the whole day will go by and then we're like, we'll listen to it the next day and we'll be like, nah, we just wasted a whole day. You don't waste time, but, we'll be like, let's scrap all that and just start over again. But we have the luxury, we don't have to pay for studio time. If we had to pay for
we own our studio, so we could.
if we had to pay for recording
that's a big
studio
plus,
time,
yeah.
we'd be living in a tent. I mean, because we spend, back when I was in a band before, you rehearsed and wrote in your jam room, in a warehouse room. And then, once it got to a certain place and you were performing it out and then you decided to make a record at that point, you had to pay by the hour or for blocks of time at a studio. And it's crazy. That's when the fights break out in band members because you're like, you don't know your part. You just wasted 2 hours or whatever.
Right.
We have to do that. And we don't have band members, so we just have to deal with each other.
which is wonderful.
Yeah. In the beginning, it was challenging in the beginning, because I was very opinionated about what I liked and what I wanted. And, I just had to learn to work with someone else. I wasn't used to writing like this. I was used to writing in a practice space with, 3 other musicians. They would come up with the music and I would have to come up with the vocals. I had no input really over what they played. But with this, we collaborate on everything, and it's great. And it's almost, like he won't have, there won't be a guitar solo, so to speak, or a part. And he'll be like, let me just sit on this. And then the next morning, he gets up at 4 a.m. He's playing his guitar with headphones on. And I'll come in and listen to what he's written. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's epic. It's like, it's magic. It's like he's giving me this magical gift, when he writes things. And just like in chemistry, that David Gilmour sounding guitar, I'm just like, whoa, where did that it's great. I love it. So anyway, I'm all wound up. Let's jam.
We're ready to play a show now. It's
right.
But it's so like, so chemistry, we have the opportunity, and we that's probably what, version 3 of it or something like that.
I don't know, man.
Maybe 4. But it started going off in this other direction. I said, all right. I said, people are gonna say you put a Pink Floyd song on your album. And so I said, here it goes. I said, okay, here we go. So
and
it was fun.
We had different drums on it, and then we're like, let's just put some rock drums on it and see what it sounds like. And we're like, oh yeah.
Definitely. I mean, Pink Floyd is and will always be one of my top probably 10 favorite bands of all time and top 5 favorite bands from that era. I will say that to break it down a little bit more, because there's been like 3 iterations of Floyd. My favorite is the David Gilmour Floyd. Basically everything from like, Dark Side up to Animals. It's like The Wall. This is I might get some slack for this, but The Wall, I think, in my opinion, is probably my least favorite album from that iteration of Floyd. You can clearly tell that they're kind of like at their breaking point as a band with like the sound of that album, and compared like artistically to Animals or Wish You Were Here or Metal, Out of Mother Heart, even Dark Side. I mean, it's like it just doesn't have like the same, I think, emotion and tone that the prior albums had. Plus, I really don't like Roger Waters. I I I love Gilmore. I mean, Dark Side is a phenomenal album, but Money is the only song that has no business being on that album, at least in my opinion, which is the one that Waters wrote. Yes, Gilmore did an amazing guitar on it, and astonishingly enough, that was what the song that was like on the top 100 for like a decade or something. So that's definitely admirable, but to me, with my taste, it the whole album is meant to be like a trip, essentially, and that song, it's like it takes you out of the vibe of like the
Out of your
album.
trip.
Yes, out of the trip, and then
Yeah.
and then once it goes into Us and Them, you're like, there we go, we're back where
We're
we're supposed
back.
to. Wish You Were Here, the whole album through and through is phenomenal. Metal, again, one of my favorite albums from that iteration of Floyd that I really don't think gets enough attention. Echoes is one of my all-time favorite songs. And like I grew up in a generation where it's like we like jam bands, we like bands that, can play stuff 5 minutes, longer, really like 6 minutes, you know, going into like the 10-minute, range. And the fact that Floyd, has a couple songs that are like, you know, almost 25 minutes long or 26 minutes long, you know, I really like when I dive into trying to discover new music and listening to new music. I've come up with this like a little equation. Awesome album artwork plus long tracks equals great rock band. That's just
I think
my
we
own.
just got a compliment.
Yes.
Have you put the stopwatch on our phones?
They're long.
We
That was what I was leading up to.
Yeah, they're long. Some of them
we
are pretty
debated
long.
about that. We were looking saying, are
These too long.
long? We went, you know what? This is our song.
Who
This is what we
cares?
wrote. Who
Yeah,
cares?
yeah.
So
And also when I am like, trying to listen to new stuff, if and this also goes into the long stuff, if like the album is like, at least for me, if it's less than 37 minutes, you kind of lost my attention. Like I'm looking for really 38 minutes leading towards, the max a CD can hold, which is like 120 minutes. Like if you it's and especially if I find bands that really push like how much they can, hold on a CD, whatever the time allotted or whatever it's called, like if they can really push and like max that out, I'm like these guys are like, or these girls are like, really like this is a band that is worth not only listening to if they have, more of a discography, listening to every album in chronological order to understand, who the band is, what their sound is, the evolution, to where they are present, all that stuff. And I'm like really of like essentially a dying breed that loves to, listen to B-sides and demos and, bootleg stuff and, you know, just really, like my attention span is not of like the I guess the Gen Zs where it's these TikTok clips and Instagram stuff and these 30-second or minute reels and all that. I'm like, I like actually sitting, you know engaging in the music, listening to the music, breaking down, the sound, the vibe, the lyrics, what it means to me, the impact it has on me emotionally and, creativity wise. One of my favorite movies of all time is The Crow, and the music in that movie, really is why they shouldn't have even tried to remake it. And I actually interviewed the director of that film and talked about specifically how he and Trent Reznor had a key hand in like picking all the bands that were featured in that movie. And it's like it's just nostalgia, but it's just like I love movies that kind of like, like it could be gritty, it could be horror, but like music is like the backdrop theme, you know, but also a key element to the film and driving the film and, for different scenes and all that stuff. And, that film in particular was one that really, really impacted me as like at a young age. That was like, this, and I grew up like in the 90s and everything. So like my era, I guess, was like, where my dad and mom, it was like, Hendrix, The Doors, Clapton, Zeppelin, Skinner. My dad is a huge Frank Zappa fan and got me into, I'm a big Zappa fan too, and the Mozart of rock and roll. And I feel like my generation kind of grew up with like essentially the last of like an actual musical movement. And I really feel like sad and disappointed for like this generation and the new generation kind of coming up because it's like they don't have, a Kurt Cobain, They don't have Beatles, they don't have a Jimi Hendrix, they don't have, a Soundgarden, Chris Cornell, which I actually wanted to bring up because I was at one of his like last shows where they were touring with like the last album they did, and it was like the first time they had been to Pittsburgh in like over might have been like close to 20 years or something. So I had the chance to see Chris Cornell in like the last, probably actual Soundgarden together like tour for an album. So like that was like a huge meaningful show. I've also was at one of on a different, musical genre note. I'm like really into like old school kind of 90s rap and hip hop. And I got to see DMX before he passed, so I feel like, I've been fortunate enough to at my age and when I was born, I saw, Roger Waters do The Wall, even though I'm not the biggest fan, but it was like I got to see, a Floyd album live, and one of the most iconic, regardless of what I think, so it's like it's sad that like the way the music industry is almost like the same as the film industry right now, and it's like they don't want to take a chance on like a new sound. They'd rather commercialize and getting into conspiracy theories here, manipulate and brainwash and control, the youth versus like, letting people think for themselves. Hey there, all my fishes in the sea. Thanks for tuning into today's episode and for being a subscriber. Your continued listenership and support means the most and helps keep the show growing to deeper and deeper depths. I want to let all my guppies in the sea know the Fisch Bowl has now officially partnered with FastCustomShirts.com, where they're now selling custom Fisch Bowl t-shirts under their podcast and website section. Every t-shirt that's purchased helps and goes a long way to keep the show growing to deeper and deeper and higher depths. I also now have custom hats, beanies, handbags, pens, mouse pads, everything to make you look like the coolest looking fish in the sea, which you can DM me directly on Instagram at the Fisch Bowl 88 or on Facebook at just the Fisch Bowl, or you can friend request me, Sam Fish, directly and get yours today. Your continued listenership and support again means the most. It's the most important fishes that flock together. We are a school of fish and we keep the unit going. Let's all keep swimming upstream.